back to my channel at The Movie Optimist, everybody, where I find the silver linings and even the worst of films. Today I'm here to do a review for the newest Apple original, The Gorge. Now normally I don't do streaming movies because, well, for the most part they usually suck, but this one is different. This film was directed by Scott Derrickson, who's done things like The Black Phone, most notably with Ethan Hawke, which I really enjoyed. He also did the first Doctor Strange, which again, I really enjoyed. He's definitely a director rooted in horror, so when I heard that this movie was coming out and I watched the trailer, I was pretty excited for it, and upon watching it, I was surprised. Essentially, in this movie, Miles Teller plays, well, the United States' like #1 sniper, and he essentially has like no family, no friends, no significant other, so if something were to happen to him, not many people would care. This is exactly what motivated the government to hire him to watch over the Gorge, and it's the same for Anya Taylor-Johnson's character. She's pretty much the Russian version of that. She is their best sniper. She doesn't have a whole lot of family and friends, so no one would come looking for if something were to happen. So they're both hired to essentially watch over this gorge, this giant hole in the floor from opposite towers across of it. He mans one, but he watches over hers, and she watches over his, both with their sniper rifles. And their whole task is to stop whatever's living in the gorge from coming out and going out into the real world. They don't know what's down there, they just know that it's something evil, and they're not to go down there themselves. However, because of their isolation and being alone and only having each other, they start talking to each other through like marker boards using their binoculars, kind of like in Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, how they communicate with that guy above the guns and ammo shop. Very similar here. They wind up falling in love with each other, and one day while Anya Taylor-Joy is going through something pretty devastating, Miles Teller thinks of a way to get himself across the gorge so he could be there with her. However, on his way back, after comforting her and spending a night with her, something happens to the cable and he falls into the gorge, but now because they love each other, Anya Taylor-Joy jumps in on after him because she doesn't want to lose him. She doesn't want to lose this person that she's bonding with over their year-long stay watching this outpost. Once down there, they discover what horrors await them and what created this gorge. Now I'll say this, kind of like with Heart Eyes being a genre-blending movie, this one is very similar, whereas in Heart Eyes was a rom-com horror thriller, this is definitely just a romantic horror thriller. It takes out the comedy, and the reason why I commend this one more so than Heart Eyes is because Heart Eyes first and foremost was a romantic comedy. It was like a cute Hallmarky romance with a lot of comedy sprinkled with like super R violence, whereas in this one they take the romance a lot more seriously. Scott Derrickson talks about how he actually recently just fell in love and got married before making this movie, so the script really resonated with him. The writer of the film wrote this during the pandemic when COVID was at an all-time high, and he was feeling very secluded and antisocial and alone. So he wanted to make a film about two people that fell in love, but they had this giant gorge keeping them apart, because that's kind of how he felt during COVID. So the overarching theme of this movie is first and foremost love. Scott Derrickson talks about how this movie is essentially a rainbow, where the first layer of the rainbow, the first color is love. That is the crux of everything, and then every other layer on the inside is everything else that this movie is. It's every other genre. The next one is action adventure, the next one is sci-fi, the next one is thriller, the next one is horror, the next one is monster, but the overall main one is love. And you have to really buy into the fact that these two people find love in each other in this isolated area watching over this horrific thing. They bond because essentially they're the same person. They're both broken and lost, and they find something in each other that brings them comfort, which causes Miles Teller to break the one rule of not communicating with the person across the gorge and literally crafting a means to get over there just to spend time with her. And honestly, I don't know if it's because Scott Derrickson just fell in love, and I don't know if it's because the writer was going through something very tragic during COVID, but they really nailed the feeling of falling in love amidst this isolation. I really bought their love story fast. Now, your enjoyment of this film is really going to depend on how much you're willing to sit through an hour of watching two people fall in love. There is action scenes sprinkled in. It's not like a solid hour of just them flirting. Like, they'll flirt for 15-20 minutes, and then they'll have to fight a bunch of creatures coming up the side of the wall of the gorge. Then they'll flirt again, then they'll have to fight again, then they'll flirt again. And then once the last hour kicks in, it's when they're both in the gorge and they're both fighting their way out and trying to discover what caused this place to be as evil as it is. So you eventually get the movie that the horror fans are looking for, but it doesn't work unless you buy that they're in love, because it's their love that keeps them alive in the second half of this film. I myself like romance movies. I mean, Titanic is one of my favorite films of all time. I find it so hard to convince me that people on screen are actually in love. This movie did it, and the last movie to truly do it was We Live in Time with Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield. I was so convinced leaving that movie that they have fallen in love in real life. That's how much their chemistry was shining in that movie. And here it does it as well, and you believe it because of the characters and who they are and their backstory. You understand why they would fall for each other. So when they do find themselves in the gorge at the end, I was enthralled and I was scared that one of them weren't gonna make it. And it also helps that when shit does hit the fan and they start using these awesome like CQC tactics where they're like covering each other's back, it's pretty awesome to see them using militaristic tactics to annihilate these creatures in this gorge. So it's not just a good love story, but it's also a good action monster thriller feature too. It's very exciting throughout the whole thing. Even when they are bonding in the beginning, there's still this tension that you know something at any point in time could interrupt this romance, and you're constantly waiting for it to happen, only for it to either not happen and you get a sigh of relief, or it does happen and then you get this exciting, thrilling action sequence. I thought the balance of this movie worked really well. It didn't feel like it was too much in the romantic category, and it didn't feel like it was too much in the horror category. Like I said, it was like a perfect blending of the two genres, and it's really a testament to how good of an actor Miles Teller is and how good of an actress Anya Taylor-Joy is, and they just had wildly good chemistry on screen. So at the end of the day, I really enjoyed this film. I bought into their love story. I loved the creature designs. I loved all the action that takes place in the second half. There's one notable sequence that is the standout for me in the movie, and it's a scene where Miles Teller is defending Anya Taylor-Joy's castle with a turret, essentially, that comes out of the floor, and she's doing the same with a turret of her own defending his castle. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of like AI turrets all along the wall, and they're all shooting at these creatures coming up in the wall, and the camera cuts back to a wide so you can see it all play out, and it just looks so epic. It was my favorite scene in the movie, and it actually happens rather early on in the film. It's like their first interaction with these creatures. I really can't recommend this enough. In a world where streamers are constantly making quantity over quality and they're just mass producing things to put out on their service so that people don't unsubscribe, you're constantly getting really mediocre films with not a lot of love and TLC put into it. But this clearly, the filmmakers behind it, the writers behind it, the actors, they all really cared about this material and they put their all into it. It's an excellent romantic action adventure with monsters, and I couldn't recommend it enough. I'm gonna give this movie an 8 out of 10. It's not perfect. There are little things here and there, some logic problems. There are some stupid decisions made by our heroes here, and I thought that the reveal of what caused the gorge was a little anticlimactic. I understand what they were going for, but I wish they didn't try and make it make sense. Like, it was cooler when it was left to your imagination, like, is it the gates of hell? Is it not? But instead, they give you a solid answer of what's going on, and I was like, oh, you guys try to be smart, but you should have just left it more to the imagination. It would have made it easier to go into a sequel, whereas in now, this movie wraps up with a nice bow. Like, it could just end here and you never get anything else, and it's fine. It's a good movie. You never have to worry about if you want to watch this again, you gotta watch 2 and 3. You could just watch this as this nice, contained little story and move on. But I would have liked to see a sequel because I really like the chemistry between these two characters, and if they left it open-ended, where you didn't really know what the gorge was, you could have taken the sequel anywhere you wanted, but they kind of hamstrung themselves in this corner where it's going to be really hard to see how they even justify a sequel, but who knows? The writer was talking about making a prequel and seeing the events unfold that caused the gorge, which could be cool, but it is a bummer that it won't have Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy. Anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Have you seen this already? Does this movie make you want to get Apple Plus to watch it? Have I given you a reason to watch this movie this weekend? If I have, let's talk about it. And as always, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll catch you next time.